It's not about getting the people that are going to church already at another church to come to my church. That's not important. They're at a church. Like they're getting fed. They're doing well. Like let them be there. It's the people that don't and haven't heard Jesus, of who Jesus is, and the message of Jesus Christ. And how do we get them to a place where they go, I'm going to walk in those doors?
Hey, welcome to the Missional Marketing Podcast. I'm Bart Blair, joined by the CEO of Missional Marketing, Jason Hamrock. And our goal with this podcast is to help your church grow by leveraging digital marketing and effective communications. We're all about digital marketing and communications, helping your church expand its digital footprint in your community so you can reach more people for Jesus. And we produce this podcast every single week, bringing interviews or just great discussions that will hopefully help you as a church communications leader or a pastor or an executive pastor or a creative person on the staff of your church to do more, to do better, and just to use your gift and your calling for God's kingdom. We have a really awesome interview for you today. In fact, we just recorded it a few minutes ago, and I'm still trying to catch my breath because it was a mile a minute. We covered a ton of different stuff with a very exciting guest, someone that I'm going to guess that most of our podcast listeners, they're probably not familiar with Kim, and they're probably not even familiar with Northview. Northview Church is one of those unique churches that has kind of quietly become this big, giant, kingdom impacting church. And Jason, why don't you give a little bit of an intro of both Northview Church as well as Kim before we roll the interview?
You bet. Kim Tarlton. So you're talking about the creative directors. This is what she does at Northview. And she spent 25 years as a creative person. And she's used those talents and skills to really make Jesus more famous at the churches she served. So she's at Northview. Northview is in Indianapolis. It's a church of 10 campuses. 10 campuses. So they have something like 25 plus services on a weekend. And Kim's a creative director, and she does that with just 7 people on her team. Wow. Lots of openings, but Kim talks about the creative process at Northview and kind of how they see things. And I just love her perspective. I love her energy. And there's a lot to learn from her. But she's doing a great job. Actually, Northview right now is going through a leadership transition, a really good leadership transition. So she speaks into that as well.
Yeah, Kim is a very, very creative and a very inspiring person. Really delighted that she would hang out with us on the podcast. We actually have a couple of former Northview staff members who are actually on our missional marketing team, which is how we connected with Kim. And we're really appreciative of her. She actually was taking a day off today from work, and she decided to record the podcast with us. So that was pretty cool. Kim, if you're watching this or listening, thanks. We appreciate that. If you are appreciating this podcast, we would appreciate you leaving us a rating or review. Whether you're watching on the YouTube channel or downloading from one of your favorite podcast apps, if you would leave us a rating or review, that will help more people find this content. Our audience is growing every single week when we produce these podcast episodes, and that's just really encouraging for us. It inspires us and makes us want to keep doing it. So thanks. Let us know if it's being helpful for you. We really appreciate that. And if you haven't subscribed, make sure that you subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes that we drop every single Friday. Well, thanks again for tuning in to the Missional Marketing Podcast. I'm Bart Blair. That's Jason Hamrock. And here is our interview with Kim Tarlton from Northview Church. Kim Tarlton, welcome to the Missional Marketing Podcast. Thanks so much for joining Jason and me on the show today.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm super excited about this. And I'm definitely getting used to and getting to know the Missional Marketing team and all that. So it's exciting just to be able to join you guys today to chat a bit.
Yeah.
We have just met today. We have some mutual friends / colleagues who introduced us to you and said that we needed to get you on the podcast. So we've got you on the podcast, and we want to hear your story. We want to learn about your church and what you do at your church. But before we get into the weeds of Northview, let's talk a little bit about Kim. Why don't you share your story? Tell us a bit of your background and how you ended up doing what you're doing today.
Yeah, awesome. Well, So I was raised and grew up in Los Angeles, California, down there in Hollywood. I actually grew up in Hollywood. My dad was a construction coordinator. He oversaw studio sets and all that for the motion picture business. And so I grew up in Hollywood, around Hollywood stars, around some of the elite, just going and being able to be a part of that. And so that was partially like some of the goal, if you would. I grew up in a Christian family, going to church. I loved church. I thought church was like the bomb. I thought it was the greatest place to be. I remember coming back from like a cruise one year, and all the people were like, we're going to have this big gathering, a cruise ship. And I was like, I got to go to church. I was like 12 years old. So I loved God. I loved the church. I loved what the Big C Church was doing. And being a part of that. And so that mixed with Hollywood was a little interesting and a little different. You kind of had your Friday personality, and then you had your weekend personality. And so really kind of grew up in that with my family. But my dad was very heavily involved at our church, and he would do big stage productions, and he would build the stages for those, but then he would also write some of them. So the church that I worked at for 14 years, he started our passion play there, which is like the big Easter pageant, if you would. And he wrote the original of that and built 2-story 3D sets. And growing up around that, I started to just love theater. And so we called it in church world, we called that production back where I come from, not just the sound and lighting side of production, but, grew up around that, grew up around performers and started getting into that myself. And I had access to, I was a little spoiled. I had access to a lot of really talented, very professional people that were in the business. And so being able to kind of work with them and kind of gain some more skill. I thought that I was going to go to Broadway and beyond Broadway. That was the big goal for Kim Kersey at the time. And I was just like, okay, I'm going to go to Broadway. I'm going to be a Broadway star. Back then they made $300 a week. And I was like, that's amazing. $300 a week. Could you imagine making that much money singing on a stage? And so that was it. That was the big goal. And soon, like kind of near the end of high school, figured out that God had a different plan for Kim, and that was not it. So I ended up not heading to New York, not heading to Broadway, but instead got involved and started part-time at the church that I was at. And I was 17 years old. I was a senior in high school and started I guess you could call it an internship. They called it part-time, but it would have been an internship in a sense, in our production department doing stage shows. And it was this kind of, for me, there was this like slap in the face moment that I felt like was a slap in the face moment of God, of like kind of, you're not going to be on the stage. You're going to help us run behind the stage. And I was like, but it's me. What are you talking about? Like, I need to be on the stage. But I started working behind the scenes and really falling in love with that side of things from the technology and the stage design and costuming and just all of that. And really that year, my senior year, really started changing my focus from being a big star that everybody wants to be to maybe at the supporting cast, if you would, and coming up under and really helping other people succeed, but also seeing that as success myself and seeing how I could use that desire and that skill for the Lord. And so that all changed after my senior year. I ended up again, not going off to New York, but instead I stayed there in California, stayed at the church I was at, ended up working there for 14 years and running productions. And we would do, like I said, a big Easter show pageant. We would do a big Christmas show where you'd have 15,000 people coming through the doors to come see your show. And back then, like stage productions were the thing, like everybody was doing big stage shows. And so it was definitely something that people would come out and hear the message of Jesus Christ. And it was super amazing. We'd do a 4th of July show. So we did these stage shows and again, just kind of going, okay, I'm not on the stage. And I may be behind the scenes, but this is something that I can do, and I can use these skills. I can use this desire and this passion in these ways for the Lord, for Christ and for the kingdom. And kind of started even moving from the stage to the weekend experience. And really kind of my last 6 years there at that church, getting highly involved in the weekend experience and worship and choirs and what was happening on the weekend, the programming of the services and all that, and started working that into things. So by the time I left that church, the next church that I ended up going to, that they weren't doing stage shows. They weren't they were like, why would we do an Easter pageant? That's so the 80s. And I'm like, okay, from the 80s. But it was one of those like, okay, I can't, but the services became a very important, like very engaging, like let's do an opener. Let's do something that maybe you hear on the radio, but how is that going to impact somebody that's coming into church for the first time? And so this kind of new idea of bringing in those gifts, those talents in a new and different way, and running church services as opposed to those stage shows. So started doing that, and that's where I'm at a different church right now here in Indiana. I'm at a different church, but that is really what I'm doing. It's weekend experience. It's how are people engaged from the parking lot to the seat, because the parking lot, it starts there. And you guys know that. You guys are in marketing and communications. It is more important how we are reaching them in the parking lot, how we are engaging with them to go, here is this place where you can come and you can maybe find healing. You can learn about Christ, because they're not going to get to the seat without that. Without marketing it well, without communicating it well, without being open-handed and going, okay, church is not perfect, but come and let's kind of like figure this out together. And so it's been a fun and wild ride, but that's how I ended up where I ended up today.
Wow. What a journey and a story. Thank you for sharing that. You know, a couple things come to my mind. I'd like to run this by you. It seems like, you know, in your early days, and I think a lot of people that listen to this podcast can kind of relate to this, because most people who listen to this are church staff. Sure. And everybody has their own journey. And for you, it became this, what you thought you were going to do, God had a different plan.
Yes.
And through that, though, he's really tapped into your strengths and your abilities. Mm-hmm. And I, you know, when you were saying, you just made a connection for me, because you're the creative director, which when I think of the creative director, I usually think in the building.
Sure.
But you really just spilled outside the building. And I think for churches, it's really important that if you're the comms director, or you're the creative director, or you're any kind of director, it's a cohesive effort to make Jesus famous and to connect people with him. Absolutely. Through your church, through your local church.
Absolutely.
So how did that, I mean, why is it so important that you made that connection to, if you show up just driving into the parking lot all the way through? I mean, where did that come from? Is it one of those things where you just developed and learned that over time? Is it just your creativeness of going, we've got to connect with people where they are?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Part of it, I would say, you know, I've got to give credit where credit goes. And Andy Stanley obviously is like a huge part of that. And the way that North Point Church operates is really that idea from the parking lot to the seat. And so it's been something that I remember early on, going to a Willow Creek Arts Conference with my team. And it was all, you know, dramas on stage and stuff. And I was young. I was like, that's kind of lame. Like, nobody wants to see that reenacted on stage. And it was a little cheesy.
Wait a minute. I was probably at those same Willow Creek Arts Conferences. And I was saying, that's awesome. We should be doing that.
I know. Well, half my team was like that. They're like, we need to bring that drama back to church. And I was like, really?
No, sorry. I totally derailed you there, but I was just like, wait a minute. I was probably at those same arts conferences and maybe different takeaways, but that's okay.
And I'm sure others listening are like, how dare she? dare she say that?
You
Nancy
probably
like,
have a lot of listeners that are so young, they don't even know that Willow Creek used to have an arts conference. So that's a different conversation altogether. Okay. I'm sorry, Kim, for disrupting you.
Fine.
Can you pick up your train of thought? Do you remember where you were?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I remember being there and just kind of going, this is so internal. And I remember thinking through that like, this drama that they're doing, or this moment that I'm experiencing is a very internal thing. Me as a Christian coming in, I am connecting to this drama that you're portraying, or that song, that Christian song that you're singing. And I remember kind of just thinking through like but what about those people that don't connect to the Christian understanding, like Jesus words and church wordage and all of that. And I just remember thinking like, there's got to be something for them. And that became for me, like just high evangelism. Like I would say I'm maybe 100% evangelism, which is hard because then you get the discipleship people in church and they're like discipleship. And I'm like evangelism. Like if we could it's not about getting the people that are going to church already at another church to come to my church. That's not important. They're out of church. Yeah. Like they're getting fed. They're doing well. Like let them be there. It's the people that don't and haven't heard Jesus, of who Jesus is, and the message of Jesus Christ. And how do we get them to a place where they go, I'm going to walk in those doors? And that's huge because, once you're in the doors, once you're sitting in the auditorium and you see the drama, okay, this is great. But how do we get them in the doors? Yeah. And that's really where that side of like the parking lot, it's got to be a high priority. If we're going to put a billboard up in the neighborhood, that billboard can't be like, come bring your Bible to church day. Like, I don't even know what church I'm going to go to yet, though. Like, this is not connected. I don't own a Bible. What is a Bible? Yeah. But it's got to be something that people go, this is a place where I can go and I can be me and I can be comfortable. I probably stole this from somebody, but I always talk about like the crossed arms. Like crossed arms is kind of our defense mode, right? Yeah. And so if we can get people from like that crossed arms to like, oh, look at that. Or, oh, this is my jam. This is my jam. I hear this on the radio. I'm rocking out to it. We get them to uncross those arms and they become a little more open to what they are probably going to experience in that coming hour at the service. And that's so good. It's always just been probably from that one Willow conference, which if you were there, Bart, it was Nancy Beach and she talked about hands to the plow. And I remember, and she was just like, you're going to have resistance, but you still go, you still keep moving forward. And in the church, I'm 25 years in full-time ministry now. I've had a lot of resistance. I've had a lot of times where I've been like, let's try this. And it's like, whoa, that's a little too non-Christian for me. But if we keep those hands to the plow and we keep moving forward and we keep letting people go, this is a place where I can come and I'm comfortable. I see myself here. I see myself a part of this. I see myself in these people. And in this experience, then we make then we're doing that connecting people to God part. We're doing that helping people find Jesus part. There is the follow part, absolutely, but the finding Jesus part. And it absolutely starts in the parking lot, if not even further out. I say parking lot, but further out on the highways, in their homes, and that side of stuff.
I want to take a moment to thank you for tuning in to the Missional Marketing Podcast. It's always our goal to help you as a church leader leverage your communications and digital media resources to reach more people for Jesus. One of the ways that we help churches do that is through creating social media content from your Sunday sermon videos. Specifically, what we can do for you is to create short sermon snippets from 30 seconds long to 5 minutes long, capturing those mic drop moments that you really want people to remember. We edit the videos, add captions, add your church branding, and then you or we post them to your social media channels. As a pastor, I always love to see my sermon content live on beyond the Sundays, and I know that's what you value for your sermons too. We offer this service as a monthly subscription, but we've got a 6-week trial that gives you a chance to see how it works. If you'd like more information, just shoot me an email at bblair@missionalmarketing.com. I'd be glad to meet with you, explain the process, and answer any questions that you have. Once again, thanks for tuning into our podcast. Let's get back to the interview.
So here's my follow-up question, because Now that you've said that, I totally get that, and a lot of that to chew on if you're a comms or creative director. But how do you balance then? You've got the flock in front of you. How do you balance the 99 versus the 1 and making, because it sounds like a lot of things that you do from not only from your 25 years, but now at Northview, you go after the 1.
Yeah.
But you don't alienate the 99. Explain to us how you balance that.
Yeah. And I would say a huge part of that is not me. Because in churches, like groups, volunteering, life groups and volunteering and serving, those are those things that for me is like, this is for the 99. I have stepped foot into a church and now I'm ready for what's next. I'm going to start serving the 99. You don't get now I have heard of this, but this isn't normal, of somebody showing up and going, I've never heard about Jesus Christ, but I'm here to serve at the guest service counter. You don't have that step. And so those things that making sure that us as a church, that we are highly, and that's where it's not me, it would be a groups and, life groups pastor or somebody like that, who is definitely more discipleship minded. And they're probably that 100% discipleship that is fighting for that to be a priority in the church. Because I would say for me, the one is absolutely the goal. We do things like we'll do a big giveaway, during Super Bowl weekend. We gave away a man cave, if you would want to call it that, with, a barbecue, the green egg, and a recliner and a big TV. And people go, you hear a lot, and I don't want to say, it's bad. Like, you hear a lot from church people like, why are we spending money on that? Why are we spending money on giving away this big thing? Like, that just seems like we're wasting money, and like that could go toward feeding the homeless. Well, yeah, it definitely could. It definitely could. But for me, that one person that heard about that giveaway happening and decided, I'm going to go check out this church, but I'm maybe just going to show up because I want to get my name in the giveaway. And they showed up and they heard the message of Jesus Christ, and they had an experience that made them go, maybe they went, I'm going to come back. Even if I don't win that prize, I'm going to come back. And so that is highly, for me, that is highly where I keep my focus. But understanding that those other things in 99, they are still a part of it. And they do need to continue to be herded. Back in the day, like the shepherd would leave to go, right? The whole idea is the shepherd leaves the 99 to go to the one. Well, we are in a time where it's maybe not, we don't have to leave them. And we do have systems set up within the church to be able to offer them things like life groups, where you can connect more and more and more to God. And if we just start that, that to me is like, it's so life-giving, to be honest. So
what about a radical idea of you have the shepherd plus the 99 loving on the one?
Ooh, yes.
Hey, Jesus didn't preach it that way. Come on. I'm just kidding.
Maybe all 99 went to look for the one.
Yeah,
that's right. That's what you're saying.
Let me ask you a question.
So good.
Those posters on the wall behind you, anybody who's watching this on YouTube, they're going to see them. But if you're listening to this via audio, that's Disney stuff. Yes?
It is.
So
yeah.
You're a Disney. I'm just going to call you out. You're a Disney freak, aren't you?
I love my watch is Star Wars. I am. Yeah. I love all things Disney.
Okay. Let's talk a minute about that. As a creative director and as a person who is trying to leverage this parking lot to the seat experience, what kind of things have you sort of drawn on from the things that you love about Disney and your experience with Disney that you have implemented into your church context?
Yes, that is so good. One of the things, and I love Disney movies, love that side of stuff. But what I really love is Walt Disney. Now, here's the thing, like that guy was like leadership top notch. I will butcher every quote that I try to quote to everybody, but he had this kind of idea that this principle that he would put out. And the principle was leading into that, like, we have to be futuristic thinking. And like, so we can honor today, we can honor where we're at now without like living in the past, right? And we can continue to look forward and move forward, but still honor the past. But we don't have to live in the past, right? And so with so much of Walt's thinking, it was so futuristic thinking. Now, I would say we are not the church that is like the most futuristic thinking. And it's hard for churches to move to the futuristic thinking in a sense. But I love how he was so intentional about making sure, like, what is next? He never looked at, like, they could open a ride and he wasn't like, this is it. This is the end all. It's never going to get any better than this. No, it was like, this is great. Got this right. But what about the next theme park? What about, he created Mickey Mouse. And if you look at Mickey Mouse throughout the years, Mickey Mouse has changed. He has just become less of like a little stick figure and more of like a character, a full embodied character. And he would see that. He's like, yeah, this is Mickey Mouse now, but there's more to Mickey. Like, let's keep working on it. Let's be futuristic thinking. And so, yeah, with Disney, I think that that's one of those things that we learn. I think they do guest services in a way that just is untouchable. And we try, like I try in everything, in every church I've been in, I've been like, oh, we could. and that may be a little difficult. But at the same time, like it's so intentional in the way that it's just like this. And it's not like a thinking of this is not good enough. Or, okay, yeah, whatever, we just did that. He would celebrate things. He went from Mickey Mouse and like those little shorts to a full-length movie in Snow White. And then now if we look at where animated films and like them buying Marvel and just everything like that, like all of that has just been this futuristic thinking and staying on track with that and going, we're going to celebrate where we're at. We're going to celebrate the past and we're going to honor the past, but we're definitely not going to just live in the past. Every movie is not going to be Snow White, hand drawn by, now we're using digital. And I think in the church, I've always tried to, and I fail at it often, but I've always tried to keep that as my thinking is if I'm intentional about this, then the experience could be different for somebody. It could be the next. And I want to honor, like right now at Northview, we are in a transition, a succession of senior pastors. And we want to honor our senior pastor that is retiring, but we need to move forward with our senior pastor that is coming in. And so how do we do that? We intentionally love on and care for our senior pastor that is retiring. And we intentionally go, hey, we're on board. We're seeing where we're going. Let's do this. Let's hit the ground running. I've got your back. I'm on the team. And let's see what the future is going to bring. And so just, again, being so fully every little thing, like if we're going to do a special in service or if we're going to decorate the environment, what about this is forward thinking and future thinking and not just going, well, what we've always done is this. So yeah, like I love the Disney. I love I could talk Disney for days.
Oh yeah. No, I love your innovative entrepreneurial thinking spirit, because I think the message of Jesus is never going to change because it's the gospel and it's good news for everyone, but how you deliver it, that's what you're talking about right there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think we have to be open to that change and that creative thinking. And really, Walt Disney is one of a kind.
Yeah.
But think about all the people that created from him. Like they took his inspiration and then they did their own thing, all these amusement parks and just and the church is kind of no different, right? We can lean on one another, we can learn from one another, and as you guys are really creative, other churches can learn from that and
Sure.
even take it up a notch.
Sure. Yeah.
That's
Absolutely.
the body of Christ.
It is.
Kim, let me, as a futuristic thinker, as a creative, and as a dreamer, let's just pause for just a second and share with us a little bit more detail about what day in operations with Kim and her team looks like.
Yeah.
What it's looked like maybe over the past couple of years since the COVID pandemic started. And then what are some things that you're looking forward to? Obviously, your church is going through a senior leadership transition, which is huge, because there's a lot that will come along behind that changes in the church. But what does your work entail week in, week out? And what things are you looking forward to in the future for your role and for your team at Northview?
Yeah. So week in, week out, it's very different. It's funny because talking about like wanting to do Broadway and all of that. If you think about it, they create a show and then they do that same show 8 times a week for years. A same exact show. The lighting cues are the exact same lighting cue. The sound needs to turn on at the same time all the time. The lyrics to the songs are always the same. And yet every single week it is different for church. At every church across the United States and beyond, it is different every week. Every week, you are probably going to do a mixture of different worship songs. You're maybe going to throw something in here that is a special music or maybe a special performance. The videos may look different. We do a bumper video every week, and it's a different bumper video. Some churches use one bumper for an entire series. Ours are different every week. So there's 52 every year bumper videos that have to be made. And so it is, because it is so different, the message that is spoken by your pastor is a different message every week. So pretty much every week is going, what does the next series, and we try to be pretty far out in advance. I work comfortably in a 14 to 20 week timeline, and to go, what does 14 to 20 weeks look like from now? I love timelines. I'm a spreadsheets nerd. So like stuff like that just makes me so happy. And then I've got pastors who are like, so can I give you my message on Thursday and I'll preach it on Saturday? And you're like, how do you put something like that together? So for me right now, a lot of it is that preparation for every single weekend, right? Like, is there going to be something special this weekend? So in 2 weeks from now, we kick off a series. And for that series, we needed a graphics package. We've needed promotional materials that are put out. On top of that, the services. So what are those 4 weeks going to look like in the services? We want to kick off the series with, it's a summer series about road tripping. So we want to kick it off with just like a fun musical compilation of road trip songs, adding in some dancing in there. So then you're going, okay, team, we need to find the dancers. We need to get the compilation together. So I bring in our music producer, and this is kind of what I'm thinking. And these are the songs I'm loving. And let's do a mix, and working with him on like what that mix is going to be. Is it going to be played live, or are we going to use a recording? Then on top of that, we've got, like I said, 52 videos, and that's just bumper video. Sometimes we've got an additional video. I would say about half the year, we throw an additional video in on a weekend. So if it's a story video or something along those lines. And so working through with the video team, what are those videos like? What's the big idea? Again, it's a kickoff of a series next weekend. So we're going to have a series themed video. And what does that look like? Since it's a road tripping series, then they come back and they're like, okay, we have this idea of like a family getting ready for a road trip. Awesome. So they're going out, they're shooting that, they're bringing that back, and we're looking at the edits, and we're going, is this too long? Is the music right? That video once, and I just am so lucky. My husband is the head of the video department. So, and by I'm lucky, he's lucky, obviously. Because then when he comes to show a video, he's like, she will be the word. She'll just lay it in on me and just be so honest. And it's true. It's easier to be honest with him. But being able to look at the video and go, that was a 2-minute video and it felt too long. There's like these dry moments. You guys didn't record any audio, no talking. People are going to get lost. Like they don't understand this part, and really kind of breaking down like what needs to be tweaked within that to make that tighter, to get that video tighter, and where it needs to be. So every week is kind of like a fast run into what is coming. So future thinking. And then there's the prep for what is about to happen. And for us to be able to be so far ahead and well ahead that when my senior pastor comes to me and says, hey, could we, or I need, for us to not be like drowning so much in what we're doing to get that weekend ready, that we're able to go, yes, we can put a pause because we're actually working on something for 14 weeks from now. We're going to put a pause on that to help make that happen, because there's something about what you're trying to do that is going to help connect the message. It's going to help connect the dots. And we need to step into that. And so really kind of like a weekly basis, it's kind of like the earlier part of the week is kind of looking out and prepping for what's to come. And then the end of the week is going, okay, what about this weekend? Do we need to adjust? Do we need to add, or so on and so forth? So that's just a view of kind of like the day in and the day out and thinking through all of those things. With 2022, and like I said earlier, like the succession, this is new for me. So again, with 25 years, I have not had a succession. I've never dealt with that. I've never dealt with the senior pastor transition. And so this is really new. Working with two guys is very new, two very different guys, different minded, different thinking, and neither of them bad though. So it's just like, how do I continue to honor my senior pastor who's going to retire, and see through like what he is looking for and what he would like to do. Our next series is at the movies, which a lot of churches do. And he's doing the whole at the movie series, but then our new senior pastor is doing this upcoming road tripping. And so they're just different. Like, how do we adjust to those guys and what they're comfortable and what their needs are as well. And so right now it's like this kind of season of what we're calling growth. And it's a season of, for me, I'm learning something like I've never learned before, and how to manage those two personalities. It's interesting because I've always managed teams of people. And you go, okay, I have a lot of personalities on my team. And so this person coming in, with the Enneagram, this one may be a 9. And so I need to hit it in this way. And this person coming in is an 8. So I need to the situation in this way. But now you're managing personalities in a way that's like, this is not Enneagram. This is truly the senior pastors who God has chosen for this church, and managing through that. So it's been a real growth and learning season. And that's really kind of the heightened thing for 2022 right now, and how we are transitioning our senior pastor out and our senior pastor elect in to Northview. So yeah, it's a little bit different of a season.
Yeah, it's a lot. I'm going to double click on one thing that you said there. Then I'm going to throw it over to Jason for any final thoughts. And then we're going to wrap up here in just a second. When you made the statement a moment ago that your comfort zone is working 14 to 20 weeks out, you're probably singing the song that every communications and creative director that ever listens to this podcast would like to be singing as well. Sure. Most pastors are working week to week, right? It's a very, very different dynamic. Yeah. I was a creative arts director at a church for 10 years, and I was a senior pastor of a church for 5.5 years. And I kind of sat in both of those seats. This is the lesson that I learned. For those of you who are listening and who are trying to lead up to your senior leaders to get them to work further ahead, you said exactly what I would have said, Kim. Because you're working on something 12, 14, 15 weeks out, your senior pastor comes to you today and says, I need something now. You actually have more flexibility to pivot and to do something creative now, because you're already working so far ahead. And I think a lot of people who don't understand the creative process feel like, well, if I'm working too far ahead and I land the plane on everything 3 months or 5 months or 8 months out, then I don't give myself the room for the creativity that I need. But I actually think that it creates more space in your team's schedule to be creative. We just had Phil Cook on the podcast a couple of episodes ago, and he's just released a book called Ideas on a Deadline. And the whole idea is kind of, how do you be creative when you're under pressure? And really, the truth is, I don't mean to throw Phil under the bus because the book is really good, but really what he's talking about more in the book than ideas on a deadline is having disciplines in the way you manage creativity. Because when you have disciplines in your creativity and rhythm in your creativity, you have more flexibility in your creativity. And that's basically what you affirmed there. So I just wanted to double click on that for a moment. Jason, there's a lot. Kim has said a lot here today, a lot to kind of extrapolate. Any thoughts or any final comments before we wrap this up?
Yeah. I'm just sitting here listening to Kim and your story, and it's so cool how God is using you to reach so many people. And on the other side of that's listening to this, I think my advice would be, just keep tuning into what the Spirit's prompting you to do. Because I think Kim's story, what she shared today, there's definitely a bunch of different nuggets that you can pull from, chew on, and figure out how can you improve what you're doing in ministry. Mm-hmm. And it isn't that you're, it's not like, hey, the most creative person, wins. Right. It's not it at all. But it's tuning into what the Spirit is telling you to do and prompting you to do. And what you just said earlier, Bart, where Phil, this idea where when we get up against a deadline, that's when kind of our best comes out of us, because, we're so dialed in. I think there's some management there, right? And so I think it's really great that you have so far out in advance, but then, that week comes, I bet you guys produce a lot of creative things inside those few days because, you're forced to. But now, because you're forced to, you get a lot of squeeze, you get a lot of juice from that squeeze. So I think that's something to take. I guess that was sort of my takeaway is understanding that creativity matters, and it matters more than just inside the room. It starts in the beginning. That's so important. And just the fact that I think everybody's in their own little environment. You have your leadership, you have your senior pastor, and he's going to preach. And that message is, that's going to be shared. That gospel is going to be shared. Yeah. I just think it's one of those things where we're constantly looking for, I think we can get on that wheel. We're just going around and around and around and around. And that's not healthy, but it is healthy to be challenged. And hopefully this challenges you as you're listening to this, that you can do better. You can do more. You can go further. You can go deeper. Tap into the resources that you have. And if anybody wants to get a hold of Kim, how do they get a hold of Kim? Because I think there's some people that go, Kim, I have some questions for you. How do they do that?
Yeah, no, you can reach out to me via email. Should I'll say it here.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I'm like, should I type it up? And that's just Kim Tarlton, T as in Tom, Tarlton, at northviewchurch.us. We're a USer.
Northviewchurch.us.
I'll put that in the show notes too.
Yeah, we'll make sure that's in the show notes.
Thank you.
Kim, it's been a pleasure to get to know you. I'm going to take a break and catch my breath. It was fun. You are a very, very energetic and a very creative person. And we appreciate the fact that you are using your creative gifts for the kingdom. And thanks again for hanging out with us on the show today.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate the time.